seniors taking, handfuls of medication every day. We don't know. We just assume that it's blood pressure and, how many of us are actually reading the bottles and looking, are they Xanax? Is it dextroamphetamines? Is it, what are they taking?
If somebody is taking really any types of medication, even ones as safe as psychotropic medications can be, but then they're adding the complication of excessive drinking, you're going to have some dangerous outcomes. Hello, I'm Dr. Alan Heide.
I'm Don Radin.
I'm the doctor. He's the man who's lived it. This is Breaking Free. Today, we're going to be getting into all kinds of information. We're going to talk about recent developments from the CDC, what they're calling the tsunami wave, or the silver tsunami.
Silver tsunami.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about the family dynamics and the role of the enabler. There's a lot of information to unpack with both of these topics. But as we get into the pulse today, what is the silver tsunami that the CDC is talking about, and what are kind of the numbers? We'll get into it, but what have you found, Don?
Well, I did some research, so because I'm not a doctor, I don't get the most recent data, but the data that I did get was mind blowing.
Yeah.
That overdose deaths in seniors have more than tripled since 2000, which is, that's ridiculous. That our elderly are dying that rate because of overdose deaths. Benzodiazepines are used by approximately 13.5% of older adults. So with adults taking these, or seniors taking handfuls of medication every day, we don't know. We just assume that it's blood pressure and how many of us are actually reading the bottles and looking, are they Xanax? Is it dextroamphetamines? Is it, what are they taking?
Well, and I think just from like the clinical perspective, an important one when I talk to families is not dismissing the fact that just because your loved one is older, they're your parent or their grandparent, that's an excuse for what we would traditionally call addictive behaviors, right? So we see a lot of that happen in the clinical setting where it's kind of shirked off as like, oh, well, it was a senior moment, or they're just getting older, or I think they have dementia. You hear a lot of those concepts when the reality is like, well, they may have prescribed medications for some kind of cognitive decline or some kind of mental health issue, but they're also taking that with benzos, or they're heavily drinking alcohol. Now, what I would share on the clinical side is, if somebody is taking really any types of medication, even ones as safe as psychotropic medications can be, but then they're adding the complication of excessive drinking, you're going to have some dangerous outcomes.
Absolutely. And another viewpoint of family members is, well, he's earned it. He's retired. He put in his work. He should be able to kick his feet up and relax a little bit. And that combination can have someone dying in their sleep, and we call it natural causes.
Yeah. Well, and that's the complication, like in any medical setting, as far as reporting and getting accurate statistics. Thankfully, people have gotten really good on the research side of general substance use disorder, that we can capture at least some to paint a picture. But oftentimes, the emergency room or just general practitioners, they're not asking these questions, because why would they know to ask these questions when an old person falls down and cracks open their head, right? That's a natural cause of death. But, then, the autopsy report shows that they had their blood alcohol level was through the roof, or they have extremely high recent dosages of benzodiazepines. this isn't just made up stuff. This is what the research is showing. Because on the flip side of what Don had shared of the increase in substance use overdoses in individuals 65 and older, what we know is that recently, as of February of this year, 2026, it's plateaued. So normally we see a decrease over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years in the number of overdoses in the elderly population. And as of 2025 into 2026, we see a plateau of only a decrease of 4%, which means that our elderly populations are dying to things like substance use, isolation, under the name of probably chronic pain management and things like that. So these are very real issues. And I think our society, just from an observational standpoint, really struggles with the ownership of truth, right? That this individual, no matter what their age is, might be struggling with an unmanageable problem. But no, we don't want to talk about that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, drug use is taboo. You know, I did that TEDx talk on stigma, and we have this stigma. We have this stigma about the elderly. We have the stigma about drug use or alcoholism. My dad or my mom couldn't be that. They raised me right. Right? Why? Because I don't want to tell people that my father or mother is drinking themselves to death. And I smell the alcohol on them, and I just dismiss it because they've earned it, or it's my dad and he's still doing well and he's active in the senior home, and you know, or mom's isolating because she misses dad. And I'm not saying that these aren't reasonable things, but if drugs and alcohol are involved in it, then we're looking at an entirely different monster.
Well, yeah, it's an entirely different treatment model, right? We can't treat dementia if what's happening is an unmanageable problem with substances. The same way someone comes in and they tell me, like, I'm depressed and anxious, you know, but they're smoking marijuana every single day and drinking to excess or dabbling in experimental drugs. You don't even have to be an addict, right, and have an unmanageable problem with the substances to know that we're not going to get anywhere near treating the anxiety and depression if you're utilizing recreational self-medication. You know, I'm not even with certain clients interested in slapping a label of addiction for cases like that as I am of like, well, let's see if we can curtail the self-medication, get it decreased or gone, get you proper modes of coping strategies or even, you know, proper medications. Because if we can't have that conversation, then your anxiety and depression is more linked to things like shame and isolation. And that's a downward spiral that could lead to addiction, and for many does. And for many of our elderly, it is. And so there's this really interesting concept too in the research that if you guys relate to this, let us know. But they're calling it the sandwich generation. So you've got a generation of adults who are taking care of the elderly, their parents, and taking care of their kids. And they're getting stressed. And this is also where I think we're kind of seeing, if I had to surmise or make an assumption, is where we're seeing the plateau in the older generations turning to addictions because they were also sandwiched by the boomers and the millennials. Now the millennials, right, are sandwiched by Gen X and what is it, Gen Z. And it's just a generational problem. And you can see it if you were to work with someone in a clinical setting and do like a family tree. I'll ask questions like, make a notation on your family tree where there are known people who have a problem that you can see that don't talk about it. Then I'll have them highlight, make a notation for people who are known gossipers in your family. Right. So they put all these notations and I say, what do you see? A lot of these people are in relationship with each other and it's riddled throughout the family tree by the time it gets to them. And there's usually some kind of significant issues in the older generations that make it really hard for this younger generation to talk about their own struggles.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. And a lot of that, those family systems, you know, I guess the Bible calls them generational curses, you know, and even if my parents didn't drink, but they had alcoholic parents, I'm still being raised by alcoholism. And it's because my parents learned how to function in a dysfunctional home. So they learned coping mechanisms that weren't healthy.
Yeah.
And then they passed those unknowingly onto me. And so I'm living in untreated alcoholism, whether I drink or not,
Yeah.
just by that dynamic.
Yeah. And that's a tricky one to sell. And so what we would always encourage again is if you relate to these things, put it in the comments, tell us your story so we can kind of go over it. We respond to comments in a section that we do later in the show. But this is a generational issue that is hard to sell. It was one that I didn't buy until, I had to confront it in my later 20s, was that just because the generation before my parents, right? So my grandparents had riddled alcoholism everywhere, but my parents didn't drink, right? That was my narrative forever. It's like that they had somehow broken the cycle. But
Right.
then when I sit down in therapy and I'm having breakdowns,
Right.
because I'm extremely anxious, I can't sleep, I'm tearful over nothing,
Right.
irritable, restless, and discontent.
Right.
And then my therapist does a family tree, and I see the riddled nature throughout my family tree and the intertwines of the webs of shame and abuse and neglect and abandonment that are happening in real time.
Right.
That is how you see the flow through of the generational disease of alcoholism. It's not mystical. It's not magical. These are very practical behaviors that get modeled, whether you ever pick up the bottle or not.
Right. And, some of these unhealthy behaviors are survival techniques that worked when you were young, like lying. If I was asked where I was and I knew that if I said this, I was going to get a beat down, I don't say that anymore. Yeah. Oh, I was at a friend's house doing study group. Yeah. I was late because lie. So I do that to survive a beatdown, and then I grow up lying. Yeah. Right. And so now what was a survival technique has become a defect of my character. Yeah. A behavior that does not work.
Well, and I love that you highlight it, right? Because we could look with our experiences, whether we come from the just the peer perspective or we come from a clinical perspective, and we can pick out behaviors that don't work. But right underneath that is the most important part of it that you and I understand, which is that it worked until it didn't. Right. And for some people, it can work for a long time on the surface, right? Sure. Because, it breeds really well in isolation. When you don't have a lot of vulnerability and deep connection, you can keep lies going forever. You can keep distance from people forever. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I was talking with some people in my life about it. I overheard at the gas station this mom telling her son, "You'll speak when spoken to." And there's a concept of it of like, I think people believe that that's one way to teach respect to a child, right? But if we're going to take the pulse, which we do in this segment, the pulse of the U.S. is such that an older generation struggled to talk about their feelings and their experiences, so much so that massive shame stigmas made their way into political policy. Right. And then we have younger generations that are saying, hey, we just want hope, right? We just want hope. And I hear something like that at the gas station, and I see somebody maybe caught in between the new age and the old age. And it made me think of this silver tsunami. People slammed in the middle trying to take care of all the generations while losing their mind. Right. And I see a mom who probably doesn't want to effectively tell their kid to shut up, right? But instilling it in a way where now the kid might feel shame. Right.
Well, and back on our topic, that same parent who is daughter or son to the elderly is glazing over. Yeah. They just have too much on their plate to manage the finances, manage living conditions, etc., that they're not looking at prescription lists. Right. They're not checking if there's contraindications on medications and how that impacts their brain or their behavior, their thinking or their actions.
Right, because think of the beat of the pulse as you guys are listening through is The parent who tells their child, you speak when spoken to, learned that lesson from their parents. So now when they need to speak up and tell the parent, hey, I'm kind of noticing some of these things are off. Well, they weren't spoken to. The parent didn't ask them their opinion. They don't want their opinion. You will speak when spoken to. So now they're ingrained in a place of shame, can't call out the known behaviors that are causing problems. So they create some kind of narrative, which further entrenches that older individual in behaviors that they get away with. Sure. Right? But then kicks the can further down the road. And one of the ways it was always presented to me is like, here's this nice wrapped gift, and it's all of the trauma that none of us ever wanted to work on, and we're going to give it to you. All right. Right, and that's how it gets blown down.
Right.
We're going to transition now into the family blueprint. This is a segment where we talk about just different aspects of the family disease of addiction. But if you relate to the things that we're talking about here today, you have a family member who maybe the narrative is that they're managing their medications improperly, or they have dementia or Alzheimer's. If you relate to this, had any experiences with it, we ask you to leave it in the comments below so that we can answer your questions. We want to see what is our community experiencing? How can we effectively help you? So leave us the comments. Let us know what your experiences are, because it sheds light on our discussions. But for today in the family blueprint, you've got this concept that we talked about in the Pulse of the silver tsunami. And in that process, if we double click into just the family issue, we find what we would traditionally call a lot of issues with the enabler. Right. I'm sure working in your program and just working in recovery, you've seen a lot of enablers over the years.
Absolutely.
That make situations worse. How would you describe the enabler from just kind of the treatment side of things?
In brief, an enabler is someone who either permits or dismisses a destructive behavior, right? And enabling literally loves someone to death. And like we talked about in the segment before, that it may be I'm not supposed to talk about these things, and so fear prevents me from putting my foot down and saying, no, we need to address the prescription use, your overuse. I had a client who was found unresponsive. Now, he wasn't elderly, but it's a perfect example. He was found unresponsive. He went into the hospital. Parents took him into the hospital, and they did a blood screen, and they didn't find any illegal drugs. But they did find that he had been taking all the meds he was prescribed. He just happened to take 4 times the recommended dose on one of them. That basically left him paralyzed on the floor. And the family, I said, this looks really suspect. I don't care what the blood screen looks like. Oh, no, Don, you don't understand. The doctors have found nothing. But you found your son on the floor, non-responsive. And this is the type of enabling that goes on. And there's other issues like, parents who will say, okay, this is it. This is the last time, or a husband or a wife says, this is it. If you do this again, I'm done, or you got to go. And then it happens again. And the enabler says, well, if I give him one more shot at grace, he'll see how much I love him, and he'll stop for my sake. And this goes on for decades.
Yeah.
Right. And so the enabling with in regards to the silver tsunami, I mean, we're enabling our elderly to stack up on prescription meds, instant gratification. We want things now, not now, but right now. The obsession with social media and checking to see how many likes every 5 minutes, how many.
It's interesting because a classic distinction of the enabler is an axiom between helping and enabling. All right. So we want to have a general understanding that helping is doing for somebody something that they can't do. right? Enabling is doing for somebody something that they absolutely can do. And so when you think about that as it pertains to older generations, and this is just one aspect because it pertains to children as well, is that if you load up an elderly person on medications for things that they could utilize a journal for things that they could be better suited on a long walk or some light exercise, but they're taking a medication to help improve their mood when the sun will do that for you, and some proper vitamin D. We are doing for our elderly parents what they could do for themselves. And what I always share with my clients, right, because I work with the family disease of addiction, is we're in the process of leaning into just do's, right? So when you were a kid, your parents gave you food, shelter, water, and some clothes on your back. If we just look at those kind of four concepts as just do's. Now, when your parent is elderly and they need a retirement home, they don't need you to go get them the bougiest retirement home to live in. You need to offer just do's. Now, if you had a really nice upbringing and now you're financially well off, well, those were the just dues, and it kind of makes sense, right, in line. I'm not saying you go and throw them in some kind of like low budget retirement facility, but it's like, we can't bend over backwards and do for things in the older generation what they can do for themselves. And that's a really hard conversation, especially in the pulse of modern day America, where let's say that older generation didn't do anything to set up for retirement. Okay, well, it's not the younger generation's problem to do for the parents what they should have done 30 years ago. Right. So there's a bit of a balanced discussion that I imagine millions of people that would possibly maybe stumble across this are absolutely dealing with. But they're very nuanced, very hard conversations. We don't have the corner of the market on the conversation. But if we don't have it, then people are going to die silently to the disease of addiction, period, point blank.
Right. Well, that's where death and overdose and destruction happen, is in the dark, staying silent, being quiet. This is something that needs to be talked about, that needs to have open conversations. And that means sometimes the don't would be the denial of addiction, right? If someone is in the middle of their addiction, their justifications are, but it's prescribed by a doctor. Mm-hmm. I've been taking this med for X years, when really it's what's killing them. And so as a child to one of the, elderly, the silver tsunami, I listen to the justification. If I'm enabling, I say, yeah, you're right. Yeah. If I'm ready to have this conversation and really willing to help, like help looks like confrontation sometimes. And I don't mean argumentative confrontation, just truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the biggest culprits of enabling in our society are doctors, right? Some of the most brilliant doctors that I coordinate and have worked with through a referral process ask me questions, and I ask them questions. It's a back and forth. It's not them telling me and my clients and patients, this is how it has to be. It's them seeking to understand. I have a couple medical professionals, nurse practitioners, and general practitioners that I work with closely, just the nature of long-winded clients I've worked with. And when I bring to the table that, hey, this person is struggling with an addiction, it changes the whole conversation. It's no longer just a blind prescription. It's a factoring in how much clean time do they have? What was the drug of choice? How would this medication impact their overall chemical balance? Let's run labs. Let's have the discussion. So if your doctor, general practitioner, or medical professional you're working with isn't coordinating that kind of information, we're playing with fire if they're not asking. And this is what's happening in those elderly populations is they'll end up in, kind of those assisted living kind of places, and they are just like, okay, here's the meds, right? Let's kind of treat the brain, but there's a limited understanding of what the discussion is on how we're treating the brain and if that's even the issue. But the sheer statistics would show that we're not just dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's. The percentages are too high, right? It bottlenecks at a certain point. It's kind of like when you go into the school system and now all of a sudden every Timmy, Johnny, and Bob has ADHD. That's impossible. If everybody has it, Nobody has it. That's how statistics works, right?
Right.
And so,
if that's the norm,
Yeah.
then the exception would be not having it.
right. And so this is kind of that aspect we were talking about earlier of the dementia mask, right? Not everybody is experiencing a cognitive decline to a severe degree of something like dementia and Alzheimer's. But you'll notice in the discussion in society today is that these are two of the most deadly diseases and it runs in the family. Meanwhile, we have this deceptive, very large percentage of addiction in our society where the symptoms mirror those diagnoses,
Sure.
right? Sporadically. This is the key, is it mirrors it sporadically, which explains a lot of issues that come walking into doctors' offices of like, oh, well, it just kind of comes up and then it goes away. It's like, okay, we're probably not talking about dementia and Alzheimer's then, right? But oh, by the way, the narrative is how deadly those diagnoses are. Okay, well, let me tell you what's actually deadly is tampering with substances in your elderly years.
Right.
You're gonna die.
Right. I mean, none of us get out of this thing alive, but premature death doesn't need to occur.
Right.
You know, we're not burning witches anymore.
Right.
We'll probably get into this in another episode sometime, but I read a New York Times article about addiction and medicine and how 100% of doctors will tell you that addiction is a disease. Beyond that, they have no idea what they're talking about. It was a multiple choice answer on an exam. They checked, yes, it's a disease, and they got the answer right. I want to say it's in the high 90s of doctors that fall under that umbrella. So that means the vast majority don't know about addiction. And those that I have personally been in front of, the ones that I've said, hey, I'm an addict, gone to the dentist and say, hey, look, I'm a drug addict. I don't need any opiates. And then I get a prescription for Vicodin. I tell them I'm an addict in the ER and they give me Dilaudid or fentanyl. Now, I mean, it's a free lapse, but still it's going to kill me. How much more in an elderly patient? Oh, well, he's put in his time. Nothing wrong with a little relaxation. CBD isn't getting it. Here's some Xanax.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, you've got pain. Obviously, I can see that your body's riddled with arthritis. Instead of some more homeopathic solution like exercise and omega 3s, etc., we'll just write them a prescription of opiates.
Yeah, there's a mixed conversation. I see it all the time. Oh, well, those things are corny, or it's like that's not going to solve the issue. But when you start to have those discussions and you see it enough, what you're really hearing is that's a lot harder. All right. I don't know if it'll work, but this will work right now.
Right.
So then the balance of the discussion, and this is why support from people who understand is so important, is it does work, but it only works if you work it.
Right.
All right. And there's going to be pain. And on the other side of the pain and discomfort that is guaranteed is the peace and serenity that you're looking for, and how to position to present that to people when the perceived solution is instant. Okay.
Right.
The best way to combat that, and the only way I really can in a clinical setting, is that any solution that's offering it to you instant is not a solution.
Right.
It is a temporary Band-Aid.
There's no quick fix. And the misunderstanding in both the addict and the non-addict is, beyond measure, really. One of our videos or clips saw 600,000 plus. And I don't typically read the comments. I know I'm supposed to, but I don't typically read them. This time I went through every single one of them, and more than half of them had like these ignorant ideas of addiction. and what the topic was, and with their keyboard bravado and their lack of knowledge, they've flown on a plane, but they think that they can be a pilot because they rode in first class. It's just not the truth. And the same thing is true of people who suffer addiction and their families who also suffer addiction. This is a tough cycle to break.
It really is. And one of the toughest parts of it is admitting that we don't know.
Right.
I have to do that one day in and day out, where like I'll fall into the patterns of like, well, I'm educated and I work with these things every day, but then in my personal life, I'm trying to bring that in, and I have to check it of like, I actually don't know. I don't know what the solution is here. What might actually be really helpful is if I go sit down with a professional and get checked on my own side of the street. These things are really hard to do. And I see it in the comments when I take a look at them rolling in, is that ignorance is not innocence, right? You can't, it's a lack of responsibility, right? If you look at evidence, this is a big one we see on really any topic like this that we put out where we can look at the statistics. We'll get the pushback from individuals where it's a complete denial of what it is that's happening. And all we're doing is giving stone cold examples of what's happening in Dallas-Fort Worth right now, in the hospital right now. This isn't a report I came up with. These are reports that we pulled from those hospitals reporting these numbers, and a hospital in California reporting the same numbers, and a hospital in Canada reporting the same numbers, right? It converges on the truth, and we report the truth, and then we kick it around, and it does. It kicks the beehive, because society at large doesn't know what to do with truth. Social media is designed for the influencer, not the truth teller. We're still going to tell the stories, and we're going to try to do so cohesively so that you guys can relate to it. And I'm sure you can relate to that piece too, where the influencer is trying to sell you something, and we are too, but we're trying to sell you on a better life, and we're trying to sell you on the truth. And we're also open to the feedback of taking in truth, which I think is a really nice balance too when I read those comments of like, hey, what fits and what doesn't? And take what I like and leave the rest.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you were talking about, basically mentorship from other therapists. And I mean, that's why therapists seek therapy. And that's why people like myself have sponsors, even though I probably should use mine more. And sponsorship works because of mentorship, previous experience. I don't have all the answers for the guys that I sponsor at all, but I know the process that will lead them to it. And everybody has their own answers. They just don't know how to get to it. Sometimes it's clouded, their judgment's clouded by emotion. And again, back to our topic of the elderly, that emotion can be frustration. I'm just so frustrated. I'm so tired of dealing with this. Just do your thing. I'm not going to be around much longer anyway. And that sounds cold, but how much today's society is driven by our emotions is not that they're not important, but it's overwhelming. We're in that instant gratification. I mean, some of you have already, you won't see this segment because you've already swiped. You've already swiped to the next thing. Some catchy, glimpse of something new, some shiny object. And once that's over, keep doom scrolling to the next thing.
It ties in well to just hearing you share on it. It ties in well to the concept of enabling, right? Because you're old and you don't have a lot of time left, right? So you're just co-signing something that person absolutely can do for themselves. They can make change, right? But we hear that in society a lot too. People never change, right? So that's another form of enabling in our society that just naturally is afforded, is like, people don't change, right? And it's a lot easier, I think, for us to throw that out there so that we don't have to feel so hurt because that person has decided not to change. We get to kind of offset it psychologically and say it's because people don't change, all right? But here is an interesting one I was talking about with a loved one the other day. Is part of the conversation working in treatment with somebody who is engaged in truly destructive behaviors is not, hey, how can we change this aspect? It's, we used to talk about this in treatment team back when I worked in centers with healthy teams is, hey, brother, you're already dead.
Right.
What do you want to do about that? Would you like that to be the truth in the script that plays out here? Because you're already there.
Right.
This isn't you're going to die. You're already dead. The statistics prove it. What do you want to do about that?
Right.
See, this is our shift from enabling to helping. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm just going to tell you the truth.
Right.
Right.
And give you the option. Yeah. You can continue doing things the way you want to do them and getting the same or worse results, or you can accept help and get different results. Yeah. And that was one of the things that kept coming up. It was like vegans trying to tell me how good ribeye is, and they've never had meat. Non-alcoholics, non-addicts, who it's just a substance to them, they can take it or leave it, telling me you just need to quit. You just need to stop it, grow up, stop being a victim, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just not the case. Addicts don't choose to be addicts, but where they do have a choice is whether they accept help or not. And so I really appreciate that comment. Look, we do have a choice.
Yeah.
And typically, if it's a healthy one, I don't know what it is, and I'm going to need some help. I'm going to need someone to direct me. But I do get to choose whether I listen, whether I execute the help that's being offered to me. Do I do what I'm being asked to do or what I'm being shown to do?
Right. And that's the hook that brings us all together in the family diseases. I may have a loved one that I can't help but love, but the way that I'm trying to love doesn't help, and I need help to do that properly, because without the help, I'm going to enable, and I will enable them into the grave. And so I may not have a choice as to how much my heart hurts over this, clouding my judgment in the way that I'm trying to help, which is actually enabling and maybe some other destructive behaviors. But I do have a choice as to whether or not I can take help from people that it has worked for and implement it. All right. So on both sides, in order for us to come together, the addict and the family member, we have to be willing to take help. Right. From people. And this is the caveat that you were really touching on, is I can't take help from the person who hasn't experienced it. They don't know how to help me. And I'll tell you, as a therapist, for 15 years, the most common report that I get on any call is I have no idea what to do.
All right.
Exactly. But there are people who do, and I'm going to give you some recommendations and some resources of the places that you need to go to listen and learn and be willing. And if you do that, my clients get better. If they don't, they don't.
Right.
And it really is that point blank. I try to meet people where they're at with those things without I'm going to force you in there. But I give the resources. You could probably pick any one of my clients that I've given those resources, and they'll tell you I am the most annoyingly persistent person on this planet with recommendations of the things that work. I do not care how irritated you get with me. If it works and you're not doing it and things aren't working, then I don't care how irritated you are.
Right.
Right? I'm not just going to blindly take your money.
Remember how last week I told you to do this? Did you do it? No. So this week, do call these people, right? Repetition is the mother of all learning, and I think that's a Tom Hopkins quote. But addicts and alcoholics, by and large, and family members need constant reminding.
Yeah.
Because we forget, we lean back on our own understanding, lean back on the comfortable, even though the comfortable is not healthy. It's not working. It's broken. There's an old saying, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, right? And so I'll take this bad over and over and over again because I don't know what good looks like, or will it be, if something changes, will it be worse?
Yeah.
And that's just the risk you need to take, and you need to find hope in someone else. You need to see that there are other people who have gone through the same thing that you have and have found the way out.
Yeah.
And that's what's most effective, because you just don't understand is the theme of both the addict and alcoholic and the family member.
Yeah.
Right? The enabler, you just don't understand their situation. The enabler is going to justify why they enable. The enabler is going to deny that they enable. And that's the thing is the enabler is almost as addicted to the addict as the addict is the drugs.
Yes.
And they get their dopamine hit. They get their little shot every time they try to exercise the illusion of control and manipulation. And, well, I know I said I'm not going to do that again, but here, let me do it again, because I feel better when I do it again, even though it's killing you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Which is killing me that you're dying.
Yeah. Well,
And then just like the addict, I know these are a problem. I know it's killing me. Let me go get some more.
Yep. Yeah. I can't stop on my own.
Yeah.
And this is where, like in a therapy session, I'll often, somewhere early on, when it's the family member of an addict and their heels are dug in, I'll have that conversation with them of, do you actually want to mentally spar with me and sort this out? Or do you want to just convince me that you're right and that's what you're paying me for?
Right.
You know, because if you're open to sparring, I can teach you some moves, all right, that will help you find your way out of this. I'm not your one-stop shop,
Right.
but I can get you to a one-stop shop. It's called a meeting,
Right.
full of people who can help you over your lifespan. But if you're not willing to spar with me there to find why you've found yourself in an unmanageable position and you're just here to tell me why you're right, then therapy won't work for you. Nothing will work for you. It's not even that therapy won't work for you. Nothing will work for you.
Right.
That is the only thing you'll have. And then it's back to that same conversation you'd have with the addict of like, you're already dead. So the conversation with the family member is, you're already miserable. It's already there.
It's already right.
You can have it if you want it. I'm not here to take it away from you.
Right.
But if you want to explore how to let it go, then we need to go some rounds and figure this out. And you've got to be willing to take the lumps.
Well, and the truth is, we can't take it from them, right? Like I would love to be able to wave a magic wand and heal all the families that come to us, all the addicts that come to us, and just say, okay, all better now. But I can't take that. When I was young in my career in 2006, trying to work with addicts and their families, I did try to solve all their problems and to take it all. But I learned very quickly I get consumed, and I burned out in the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Then I learned my lesson to take some space. And maybe that's what you need to do with your loved one, is to take some space, just a little bit, reflect, look at yourself. Are you doing these things that we're talking about? Are you sloughing off the fact that they're drinking every day? It's just a glass of wine. Is it? Maybe it's a glass of wine that you see. Are you financing their doom, right? Giving them a stipend every day, and they're using Uber Eats to order some alcohol to the house.
Yeah.
Are you driving them to the picking up from the pharmacy and not looking at where you're picking up?
That's things like that are a common one, right? It's easy to just give and not pay attention. It's easy to just shirk the responsibility off. We all do it. We do it in all kinds of ways. And so by no means is this a knock on the way that enabling occurs. I can say as a therapist who's done it, right? I've been in the family disease. I've enabled. I've lied to myself. I've chosen not to pay attention. It doesn't work. There's a better life available to you, but we have to know the right questions. And I've written some of those down, but with the enabling, is there anything else that you would kind of add before I ask these questions in the way of tools?
No, not at this point. I think we've really about covered it. Enabling is disguised as nobility and love, right? And we're not saying that you don't love your loved one, and we don't. I know that your intentions are good, and you're not a bad person. You just don't see how inaction or taking action on something that somebody can do for themselves is harming them and not helping them.
Yeah.
You know, on the flip side, I see children that are grown, 50-year-old men still living at home with mom. And for no reason. Mom is totally mobile and can drive and take care of herself. He'll fall under the delusion that he's there for her sake.
Right.
But who's taking care of who?
Yeah.
And that's just that's the going down the family tree instead of up it. But it's a good example.
Yeah, could be a whole nother discussion, but I think an important thing to remember is you cannot breathe for somebody who does not want to use their lungs. So here's 4 questions to take away as a tool to determine for yourself if you're struggling with enabling in your home. Do you lie to others, bosses, or extended family to cover up for their behavior? Do you pay bills they should be able to pay if they weren't using? Do you feel more responsible for their recovery than they do? Is your mood entirely dependent on whether they used today? If you related to any of these questions, let us know. I would also encourage you, just for the sake of what Don was talking about earlier in the way of repetition, we need to hear these things over and over and over again. That's part of the magic of recovery and making new changes in your life. So we would encourage you to share this with at least one person that you think might relate to this, so that they can hear the message once again. And we would encourage you, listen all the way through, hear it over and over and over again. And it may get old. It does sometimes for us too. But I'm very glad that wise people had stated the truth over and over and over again. So if you relate to any of this, put it in the comments. We're going to be responding to comments in our section where we go over questions and concerns that you guys have as a community. So let us know. Comment now. Do you relate to enabling? Do you know an enabler? Let us know in the comments. We're on the front line with Don. He's going to share with us an example of just kind of what enabling has looked like as it's come through his program for an elderly client of his who came through and had a spiritual experience. But Don, you were kind of telling us a little bit about a pretty powerful story that kind of highlights some of the things we were talking about today.
Yeah, so I had a 70 plus years old gentleman. I'm not going to get too specific on the details, but he came through our program, and when I picked him up, because I like to go pick up all my clients personally if I can. When I picked him up, he was on the corner of a large property of his son-in-law's. His son-in-law had done very, very well in business, and had huge acreage and a separate house off in the corner of the property. He had his own private entrance, and this man was drinking himself to death. It was this, yes, we know it's a problem, but, and so how many times do we see families do that with the elderly? We're just going to put them in a home or her in a home and let other people deal with it. But this man came through. He had a spiritual experience as a result of the steps and our processes there. And he went on to be successful, get back into his field, at 70 plus years old, very successful. Yes, he did bump his head a couple of times on the way out the door, but or after he left. But the quality of his life has improved tenfold, and his family has brought him back into the fold. They never stop loving him. And that's the thing about enabling is we think that if we put our foot down, that, oh my gosh, they're going to think I don't love them. Or we get the threats, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill myself. Right? And these statements, if someone's going to kill themselves, if they're going to die by suicide, they're going to die by suicide. There's nothing I can do to take their method away from them. I can try to shield them. I can try to hide them. But unless I'm a mental facility, I can't lock them up.
Yeah.
And this man, he lives free today, and he's a great man.
Yeah.
But the elderly can get free. There's no age limit on this. It's never too late. It's not, I don't care if you're 95 years old, it's never too late. I've got a gentleman in my facility right now that's 76. And a lot of the success stories, I had an elderly gentleman who went through my program and became my right-hand man. There's still some productive years ahead.
Yeah.
No matter how old you are, or if you have, physical challenges, there's still, brighter days ahead of you.
Yeah.
But we have to choose life. We have to choose a solution. And if it is a solution, you'll know nothing about it. If this is a new way of living, you're not going to know what it looks like because it's new.
There's a lot of hope in this. If you or a loved one are experiencing what we talk about and what we've talked about in this segment today, reach out. Reach out to Recovered and Free. They have a residential program if your loved one is struggling actively with substance use. If you need something that's more along the lines of an outpatient where they've got some sober time, but they're bumping their heads, right? Reach out to Breaking the Cycle Therapy. We can help you out. We have dedicated programs that work with these things day in and day out. But what we hear in this segment from Don on the front lines down in his program at Recovered and Free is that no matter the age, freedom is available to you. And we want to help you do that. It's our hope that through repetition of these discussions and with the programs that Don and I run, that we can help you obtain those things. I would circle back and highlight for you, if you're one of the loved ones that Don was talking about of like, hey, you may love them, but you're enabling them, right, into their addiction. You may very well be sandwiched in between, right? In the sandwich generation, taking care of the young and taking care of the elderly, we can help you break those cycles too. But first, let us know what your experience is, because we're only as valuable to the next person as our willingness is to share those experiences. So let us know what your experience of that has been in the comments, and we'll circle around to those things and see if we can help you out through further discussions on this podcast. From there, we're going to transition into our mailbox and talk about a question that we did get on a previous video that I want to get some perspectives from somebody who's lived it.
Okay.
The question that popped up that I wanted to answer from our social media is, what do you mean when you say one's too many and 1,000 is never enough?
Oh, that's a funny one. It's some of these phrases that you'll hear in recovery. I think they're trite and they don't go far enough. They're dogmatic. However, this is one that I understood when I went to one of my first meetings as a young man, because I knew exactly what they were talking about. That when somebody takes one, the physiological response is another one. And they cannot help that. I don't care to debate that one is too many because it sets me on the path to go on a binge. And those usually end poorly. So the 1,000 is never enough is why. Because if I have the one, I'm having the 1,000. If I take one line of cocaine, I'm doing all of the cocaine. If I drink one beer, I'm drinking all of the beer. So one is too many, and 1,000 never enough. And it's funny when I go to a restaurant, how many waitresses and waiters come up. Of course they don't know, but it's happy hour. Hey, would you like a drink? And I look over at the bar and I say, you don't have enough. Oh, we've got plenty in the back. No, you don't. And that is one is too many, 1,000 never enough. And if you're an addict or an alcoholic, you know that to be true. You may want to deny it. You may not want to look at it. But have you ever had just a couple? And if you have, was it under certain duress? Because there was one time I did it with my first wife. We were on our way to a corporate Christmas party. And the whole drive there, as I'm driving there, she's, don't make a ass of yourself. And you can't be drinking tonight. It's too important for me to, and I'm good alcoholic. Yep. And I'm getting more and more angry. And I went to the event. I had 2 drinks because that was the tickets they gave us, was 2 drink tickets. And by 9 o'clock, I was like, have we had enough fun yet? Can we go home? I had my 2, and I did not have a third one, but I was not the life of the party. I was not happy. I was able to control it, but I did not enjoy it. So one is too many, and 1,000 never enough. And every once in a while, you might be able to pull off what looks like control, but I know you're suffering.
And that's really it. The bedrock of one's too many and 1,000 is never enough. It's true for the family member as well. One time of enabling and trying to control is too many, and 1,000 times will never help. Suffering is the thread that binds us, and we hope that we can break free from these binds. Here's a snappy tool and an experiment that you can implement this week if you've listened to this point. When the person suffering in your life comes and asks you for support, you have one word. I want you to run this experiment. It's a real simple tool this week. The answer is no. Here's how we log it in our minds. No is a complete sentence. And if you've never heard it, then that's why I'm sharing this tool with you today. No is a complete sentence. When someone comes to you and you feel like the request is uncomfortable, or you've tried it before and it doesn't work, or they're sabotaging themselves and you don't want to be a part of it, the experiment is to say no and remove yourself. If you want to capture any of the experience, write it down in your journal. What was it like to say no? What was the response or reaction? And here's a kicker, right? I'm giving you the key to the experiment. If you say no and the reaction is huge, anger, resentment, hostility, then you set the right boundary and you need support to continue to do so. I hope this tool helps you. If you utilize it and it works, let us know. If you utilize it and it doesn't work, let us know. We're going to be throwing out all kinds of tools. I've watched these things work in clinical settings over and over and again, and I hope it'll help. If it doesn't, we'll give you some more, so reach out.
Yeah, I really like that. I use it for my center as well. No is a complete sentence, and you don't have to justify anything afterwards. It's not no because, just no.
Yeah.
No. And the emotional response is always going to be a big tell. If someone's rational and it was just a request, they'll say, okay.
Yeah.
But if this is especially around addiction, there is going to be sometimes blame, shame throwing, someone can get downright ugly with you because you said no. And illness cannot survive with healthy. So if you're coming from a healthy place of no, then they can't cohabitate. The illness will reject the solution.
Yeah.
And that's just exactly how antibiotics work. The solution fights the illness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's getting lively here in our studio. We've got some commotion going on. That's what we got for you today. We hope that you'll tune in. We have plenty more information just on the pulse of what's going on in the world of addiction and substance use recovery. If you need support, reach out to us. You can find all the links to our websites and the programs that we offer, and we are here to help and ready to help today. We love you guys. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Peace.